the tech giant chartered cargo flights to ferry 600 tons, or 1.5 million iPhones, to the US from India.
Airlifting a massive shipment of iPhones and other products from India to the United States.
Apple has launched an airlift from India to the United States. Behind this headline lies far more than just logistics. According to estimates by Reuters, 600 tons, or approximately 1,500,000 iPhones, were loaded onto chartered cargo flights and shipped to the United States, all in an effort to avoid the new draconian tariffs imposed by the Trump administration on Chinese goods. And it's not just about iPhones. This is part of a broader geoeconomic restructuring in which the world's largest brands are seeking escape routes from the escalating trade war between the United States and China. Apple, which for decades relied on China's manufacturing power, is rapidly scaling up its operations in India. As the White House raised tariffs on goods from the People's Republic of China to 125%, it became clear. The familiar model of designed in California, assembled in China is no longer profitable. And while manufacturing in China will not cease, India is becoming a backup runway and possibly Apple's future production hub. For the Indian economy, this is a breakthrough. If global brands truly begin shifting assembly operations en masse to India, it could radically reshape the balance of power in the global market. Given the country's low labor costs and more favorable trade terms between the United States and India, American corporations are increasingly looking toward Delhi. However, it is still too early to talk about a full replacement of China. India still faces numerous issues, from bureaucracy to a lack of advanced infrastructure. Meanwhile, the rise in tariffs is already being felt by American consumers. According to forecasts by Rosenblatt Securities, the price of the flagship iPhone 16 Pro Max may increase from $1,599 to $2,300. The reason, once again, is the Chinese components now subject to steep import duties. And although part of the production is shifting to India, the price hike will not be fully avoidable, especially considering the logistics costs of air delivery. Yes, iPhones are now easier to manufacture outside of China, but they haven't become lighter in weight or cheaper to ship. Through its actions, Apple is signaling that trading with China is becoming unprofitable, and if Trump wants to push Chinese companies out, India could become his key ally. Although Trump's strategy raises many questions. He claims that we will win this trade war, and the current difficulties are only temporary. But how long this transition period will last remains unknown. Markets are falling, shares of the largest tech companies are losing value, and investors, including pension funds, are becoming increasingly nervous. At the same time, Apple is not the only company rerouting its supply chain. Interest is also growing among other manufacturers, particularly in Vietnam and Indonesia. These countries are trying to replicate India's path while it is still solidifying its position. What just a few years ago seemed unthinkable, the redistribution of global production out of China, has now become a mainstream agenda. Parallel to this, China is not standing idly by. One of its most powerful pressure tools is the sale of American bonds. After accumulating them for years, Beijing can now strike at the dollar at any moment, triggering a surge in interest rates and a crash in the U.S. stock market. While Apple is deciding where to assemble its phones, Beijing is seriously debating whether to dump American debt as a strategic response to economic pressure from Washington. But how resilient is this U.S. trade strategy? High tariffs hinder the import of components, raise the cost of finished goods, and provoke retaliatory actions. China is already restricting access for American companies to its domestic market, and trade tensions are spilling into financial instability. Examples include supply chain disruptions, rising prices, and stock market crises. Even symbolic actions like airshipping iPhones are becoming part of a global confrontation. Indian officials, in turn, are not hiding the fact that they see opportunity in this situation. If giants like Apple are betting on India, others will follow, local media report. Economists note that, for this to happen, India will need to rapidly reform its infrastructure, reduce bureaucratic hurdles, and build its own supplier ecosystem. Only then will the shift from China become both large-scale and sustainable. And what about China? It has no intention of losing giants like Apple without a fight. Tax breaks, reduced manufacturing costs, and simplified conditions for foreign investors are already being discussed. Beijing is determined to retain global manufacturers. However, the threat of companies leaving is real, especially if the United States continues to support the relocation of production to India and other Asian countries. All of this shows that Apple's logistical maneuver is not just an attempt to save money. It is a signal marking the beginning of a new era in global trade, an era where familiar supply routes are collapsing and new ones have yet to be built. The rise of India, the potential loss of China, U.S. assertiveness, currency wars, all of this forms a complex mosaic of the new global order. American experts warn, if the tariff policy continues, the United States may not only lose access to the Chinese market, but also face a wave of retaliatory actions. For example, a ban on the export of rare earth metals or a halt in the supply of strategic goods such as gas and oil. And if this is compounded by a mass withdrawal of Chinese capital from U.S. Treasury bonds, the consequences could be devastating. Amid all this, Apple remains in the spotlight. Its decision to fly 600 tons of iPhones from India is not just logistics. It is a declaration, a statement of intent. It is economic diplomacy in its purest form. India is benefiting. China is anxious. The United States is playing the long game. But the risks are enormous. Can Apple completely pull out of China? In the near future, no. China has a unique supply chain, infrastructure, and experience. But if the Indian experiment proves successful, in 5 to 10 years, we may see a new reality where iPhones are made in India and China loses its title as the world's factory. One way or another, the trade war continues, and while it once seemed like a matter only for economists and manufacturers, it now affects everyone, from the price of iPhones to the stability of the dollar, from Trump's career to Beijing's future, from global inflation to investments in new factories. All of it is now part of one grand game that is only beginning. Stay tuned. Ahead lie new tariffs, new alliances, new economic fronts, and perhaps very soon we will see new headlines. Apple doubles, production in India. China dumps U.S. Treasury bonds. iPhone prices rise by 40%. India becomes the new industrial powerhouse. None of this is hypothetical. These are scenarios being written right now, before our eyes.